Hello, everyone. Welcome to Peachy's Little Podcast. I'm your co-host. I am the host, Peachy. We are on episode 6. This is my co-host, Tiro.
I am the actual host now. This is now Tiro's little podcast. As Peachy just said, he's
Don't
co-host. So
don't
welcome
listen
to
to this
Tiro's
man.
little podcast. I am the host Tiro, joined by my co-host Peachy.
Hi, Tiro.
This
And
is
this
this
week
is
Hello.
we are joined
lunacy.
by
Good
our
to be on your
guests.
podcast, Hero.
Thank you. We're joined by our guests, Kalt and Grankie. Thank you guys for
Hello.
joining.
I think it's actually my podcast now. This is Grankie's little podcast. So hello, how are you? I've been
Oh,
We've
here.
I
I'm
was
still
unaware.
we've converted 3 different times in the course of 45 seconds. It's going great.
Soon I'll take it over.
how it's meant to be. It's how it's meant to be.
But yeah, so this week's episode, we're talking about the oh so beautiful and non-controversial item clause.
Of
So,
course, of course.
so to get a little bit of background on what item clause even is, so in Little Cup, item clause is the clause that you are only allowed to have two of the same item on your team. So it's sort of like VGC. In VGC's item clause, you're only allowed to have one of a certain item. Here in the Little Cup, you're only allowed to have two. So you can only have two Violites on your team, two Berry Juice, two Choice Scarfs, wherever you want to run. Just you have to have at most two of them whenever you build your team. So it makes building and drafting a little bit tougher, but it also can create creative juices at times. So we'll get into discussions about all that. So uh, I guess like the big thing of like why did we create it in the first place? One might ask.
Because
Why did
LC
we?
items are so fucking good. I mean, the main thing is that um, fighting against 6 Eviolites or 6 Berry Juices or 6 whatever, especially 6 Eviolites, just gets really tedious. You can really just mindlessly put like 5 to 6 Eviolites on a team and don't have to think about your items at all. So at least from my perspective, it's a big like creative thing. It just forces you to be more creative. And also trying to fight against 6 Eviolites in a draft game. Part of the appeal of draft is how like LC draft is how fast the games are. Eviolite just slows that down, and I don't really like that personally.
I believe so. If I remember correctly, this was created. So LC draft is like became huge within APA. So APA is kind of like known as like the forefather of LC draft. And the APA admins at the time decided to create the item clause. And I believe it was mostly just to make the battles more exciting to watch, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that sounds. I didn't play her in that time, but that sounds exactly what I was thinking.
I think it was just that simple, and we've kept it ever since.
I mean, it does a good job of it. I think
Yeah,
definitely keeps people guessing. Really leads to
It
some fun
does, but
scenarios once you scout out exactly what items are on things too.
yeah. It caused like item counting, so like card counting in casinos. Now you're item counting in Little Cup.
can I
All
be
right, I knocked
completely
off
honest?
1 Eviolite. I knocked off 2 Eviolites. There's no more.
I think that's probably the worst thing about LC draft, but that's just me. But that's why I'm here, isn't it? I have a
We
Yeah.
needed the dissenting
completely,
opinion.
yeah. So I'm personally of the opinion that it's a completely pointless rule, and I think it's unnecessary, and we really don't need it in this day and age of draft LC or draft in
You're
general.
you're a
Um,
pointless
I
rule.
had I had I had 3 points here, but I've actually got five. I've got three main points, but I've got five dot points written up, so I can math. But basically, what I've got is I think it's unnecessary stress in the team building. Like we touched on it before, it makes team building a little bit tougher, but it's better than running 6 Eviolites. I disagree. I think 6 Eviolites is a terrible team build, especially in LC, which is meant to be a very more offensive meta. It's just there needs to be a balance between power and bulk. You need to have checks and balances to every sort of mon in the format. And with an item clause, I don't think you can do that at all. And you really need that power of a life orb, or you need that really strong wall breaker to just bust through your opponent's teams, or else you're not going to win. You don't have a win con at all. My next point was basically it limits the viability of certain Pokemon. So there's a lot of Pokemon you'll notice on the LC draft boards that are 8 points or that are 10 points or even the top mons. And they're only those points because of the item clause. If you have a Geodude for 8 points and you're usually running a Berry Juice set, but you take away that Berry Juice from Geodude, it's a 3-point Pokemon. It's not a real accurate representation of the mon.
I would like to interject on that one. I actually think
Yeah.
that berry juice is like the lesser item compared to Eviolite. So
Yeah.
it's actually like a specific niche for Geodude to be able to use the berry juice very well, which is why it's inflated like that. I still think Geodude's good.
Oh,
Like
it's a
you
good
probably
mon.
aren't taking
Absolutely.
away the berry juice just because it's like the best user of it on a team generally. So yeah, I do
Well,
think it's like mostly fairly rated. It's like Mon's more to me. It's more like a Ferrothorn or something like that, where it's like forced a Violite almost all the time. Like it's
Yeah.
like
yes.
the rough spot here. Like that thing probably should be better,
Pharisee,
but it's hard to run that when it's forced into an item. When you can have
Marini.
Mons that are like, yeah, like those two. But like Mons that can run into Violite or not are just generally better. Like there's a lot of like offensive pieces that just can run a Violate too, or like Life Orb, but Ferrothorn just has very few options. And you really want it on a Violate, not like Juice, because it needs to like take the first hit and the second hit.
Yeah, it does limit like the capabilities of mons that are like stuck with only running one item, like really a Violite. They are automatically in a Violite slot when you draft them. So like Marini, Pharisee, there are Focus Sash Pharisees out there if they want to be like a little bit niche and like paralyze like something
But at the
faster.
same time, why are we running Focus Sash Ferroseed? That sounds super unoptimal. But yeah,
I've seen it as ways to like
suboptimal.
counter Ponytas or a Sun in that matter, or like Sash
But you
knockoff to get
wouldn't.
rid of like if you're like have a Diglett on the team as well to get rid of like
And I guess
any
that's my main point
potential.
because yeah, sorry. I suppose that's my main point because why would you ever need to run a Focus Sash Ferroseed when you can run an Eviolite on a cheaper water type, but still run Eviolite on Ferroseed for something else, and not be restricted like that, where you've got counterplay in the team building. You don't need to run like a terrible suboptimal set to counter a big threat when the mons that you drafted to counter that big threat. Sorry, I'm getting muddled in my words, but like you kind of see how it's you just need it just limits your options. I just don't find it fun team building when you have to run worse items to be better
I guess
to work.
if you really want to run the Pharaoh Seed because it's like a super niche catch to something, you would probably come to that conclusion naturally, even without the item clause, if that's really what you're gonna do.
Yeah, with
Like a
or without
specific
item clause.
catch to
Yeah.
like a specific mon wouldn't need the item clause to run a goofy item like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just like giving an
Yeah,
example.
I don't
Like
know.
it's mostly running a Violite. Like
It
90%
is
of the time,
mostly running a
Pharisee would be
Violet,
running a Violite. 95% of the time.
but it also applies to things like Ponyta as well. Like we all pride Ponyta on being, the most versatile mon in draft. There's a reason why it's one of the first picks to go, like that. But I feel like if I'm playing a Ponyta and I have a Wooper or a Goldeen or something like that, like Power Her Ponyta with Solar Beam is probably one of the most obvious brings on the planet. Like I can telegraph that from a mile away. but my opponent would still run it, not because it's good, but because it frees up an item slot, and I don't think that's healthy at all. Like if Eviolite is the most optimal set, and an Eviolite Ponyta can just 6-0 a whole team, why should you have to run Power Herb
Because they don't
so that your
understand the
other
sunny
ones can
day.
work? No, I suppose so. Sunny day,
Yeah,
bunny
I
day,
mean,
man.
I understand that. I just my whole opinion of it is it forces this prep more than anything. Because what I appreciate about Item Clause is for the newer players, it's forcing them to like think outside of the lines of just slapping 6 of Violites or 4 of Violites plus a couple of berry juices. It's forcing them to play more smartly, considering their items, and it creates more like I think it furthers the meta and it creates more creative prep, which I'm all for. I don't like
I think it's
if I have been in leagues where it's been like no item clause, and the biggest thing I notice is people who don't really play LC and don't understand the meta that much is just they're slapping 6 of highlights on it and just going with it, and it's not really
Yeah.
forcing them to learn the meta.
But are they winning?
No.
But are they winning though?
Half
No,
the time, yes.
exactly.
It depends who they're facing. If they're facing other people with like the same skill level, like another 6 of Violite person, then yeah, they're winning. But they're facing people who've like played the game before or like understand the meta better, then they're not winning, and it's not helping with their like they're not getting any creative prep out of it. I love like
Yeah.
item clause in a way is like it can also create like random upsets as well of just like sometimes it's just the creative prep just happened to be the correct prep. That it just
Yeah,
like
I was gonna
you get beat by someone you're like don't expect to just because like their prep was like very creative and you just didn't expect to see.
say that. And at least for me personally, I very, very rarely ever like am impacted by the item clause. That's also because I run batshit crazy items a lot. I've run so many like Endurance berries or like random ass safety goggles or heavy duty boots or whatever. I run so many batshit crazy items that like not even because of the item clause that I don't even pay attention to the item clause most of the time. It's just like I'm just running other stuff. It's like, oh, I have 2 Eviolites. Cool.
I think that's another point as well. I'm glad you mentioned that because I noticed that. See, I was playing in a league without an item clause as well. It was run by Smogon players, and it was a very whack tournament. I'm just going to be out there, but there were a lot of
Oh,
good things that I took away from that tournament, and one of them was item clause. I just noticed that as I was building teams, as you were saying, the item clause didn't really apply because, like, what it's not effective team building. Um, my team doesn't never really suited 6 Eviolites because I was running Carvana. I was running Farfetch'd. Like I had the power behind it, and I needed extra power to break through teams. I
Yeah.
think I had Zigzagoon on the team as well, which is funny. But yeah, if
Yeah, like that's
yeah, I
like
really didn't need
I
it.
mean, no offense to either of you guys, but you're both really good players. So I could see that happening with like you understand the meta, you understand that like 6 of highlights isn't going to get you the win. It's a big issue is with newer players. They don't understand
for
that.
the record, I fully agree. I'm on your side here too. I fully agree. I'm always kind of on this train. This is also why I ban light clay in a lot of the leagues because I'm tired of seeing new players like try out do impidimp cheese and that's their entire team. So I ban light clay to force new players to stop drafting it.
I feel
Jeez.
like you guys are
I
looking at this wrong, though. I feel like new players just have to be punished, like in a sense that they can't keep. They need to make their mistakes in order to learn and become a decent player,
Mm-hmm.
like somebody who's more experienced in the draft. Look, you guys are right. I'm pretty confident in my abilities in this tier, but I'll be honest. I'm very inconsistent. I'm a very inconsistent player. Um, And I think this item clause also accentuates that, because I find that in a lot of battles, look, sometimes I don't need this item clause, yeah, and it's great. Like I build a team, it comes really naturally, but other times I really need it. And it came up in a team tour once where I was running a team, and our bird spam check was Pawnyard, who is usually a really good bird spam check, right? It's one of the best deals in the game. But the issue is when you've got 8 mons, this is an 8-mon format. When you have 8 mons and you've only got one check to things like win goal and watch rule and Talo and all that stuff, that check is going to get busted quickly. So Pawnyard always was gonna. I remember this one matchup where I faced bird spam, and it just I just could not find the right tools to win this endgame. It was just such a bad matchup. Pawnyard would always get weakened because it had to. They had like normal spam Zora or something like that. Um, and my only way to deal with a Talo or a Wingull was Frillish. But my Frillish just really struggled to be optimal. I had to run some really weird Focus Sash set or some really weird Colberberry set when if I ran Eviolite, I could have been able to maneuver myself and be a little bit more confident in my plays a little bit during the game. But instead, Pawnyard had to be Eviolite. Sandshrew had to be Eviolite. Coughing had to be something else as well. Like, it was just such a mess, and it left me in a position 99% of the time where I was always losing. And I just don't think that's a healthy metagame. And I think that turns off a lot of people. And I think it'd be better for new players to have that counterplay. And even for old players, I don't understand why, like, if you're an LC main, like a Smogon LC main, or a draft main, why is joining LC draft such a different experience to both of those metas? Like, you have to team build so much. You just have to team build differently, and I think item clause is just such a big factor in that.
I
It
mean,
shouldn't
it's
be
it's
that
it's
confusing.
the difference between Smogon and draft in general is a pretty big difference. Outside of like maybe
Well,
VGC.
of course, but you got to have your prior knowledge as well, and you like you need to be able to use your prior knowledge to get into a new meta game, or else you're not going to have a lot of fun, and you're not going to learn, and you're not going to learn this fast and fun meta that we all know and love. You know, that's what I think anyway. Went on a big tangent there, but you know, how do you
You
know?
know, when people do actually try to play Little Cup, I feel like the good players do tend to do fairly well still when they try it out. I don't think it's that hard to translate standard skill into Little Cup skill. You'll see players in like team tours just get sent out there and end up winning games just because I mean there's good support behind them, but they're good players that are still capable of winning the game. I
Yeah.
But that's
think
mm,
a lot of the item clause comes from like the draft building itself. So once if you can like sometimes you don't get like the right mons to fall your way to have like a team that can really navigate the item clause as well. So that sometimes messes it with it in like those 8-mon type formats.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where like building gets really sticky.
but you said
But
something about needing that experience behind you as well. A lot of people in team
yeah,
tours
yeah.
come in and they're brand new, but they still need like one of the more experienced players to back them up. And you'll also notice that in team tours that um, a lot of people who go for really high picks, it's honestly a lucky dip whether they stay consistent or not. I'm no different. I think I'm very, again, I think I'm very experienced. I think everybody in this call is very experienced. But there's just seasons where we go 0 and 4 and 0 and 7 and 1 and whatever. Like even the most recent season I won in standard, like in the dojo, I was 4 and 4. I'm not very consistent. And I think again that comes down to the play style and the team building. I don't think that's a knock on ourselves as players. I think that's more um, not being able to take advantage of our experience because of this hyper offensive lack of
I mean,
counterplay type of meta that we've got.
it was also like using the dojo. It was going up against the best LC players that we know
Of
of, at
course.
least.
Yeah. I will say
It wasn't just
Dojo.
like you weren't losing to like people that never played the game before. You were losing to like experienced players, and you were beating experienced
True.
players. It's just how it goes with like the high tier like leagues or whatever. I understand like more of like the inconsistencies, like especially when you get to tours, like team tours or whatever. Like I can understand the inconsistencies there, like when you especially within like 8 mon draft versus 10 mon, because like item clause can be a huge issue when it gets like to like smaller drafts, to like where you have less ways to handle the high tier mons, so like bird spam or ponyta and stuff of that nature.
But yeah, I have the
Yeah.
same feeling in team tours as well, where okay, I did well in my last team tour, but I can't say that I was going into every game very confident. Not because of my ability, but the way a game can just swing like that.
Mm-hmm.
And when somebody gets advantage in Little Cup and they just have the right opening lines, there's nothing you can really do to stop it. Even if I think I'm more skillful than my opponent, they can just they just might have one mon in a really bad matchup, like my bird spam answer before, where it just makes me nervous going into every single game. And I feel like if we want a competitive meta, we shouldn't be having feelings like that. I should be able to confidently go into a match and say, okay, I'm going to win this week. Not, oh, I hope I don't get crit or I don't lose the speed tie at the end of the game.
Yeah, I got you.
That's me.
I mean, I will say, even though I disagree with getting rid of item clause, I have looked into just hosting a tournament without it just to see what would happen. I think that's something worthwhile seeing what exactly that's like. But really, I think the item clause is really just for the new, like, it's primarily just gonna affect the newer players. So also, I just don't have much of an opinion on it.
I've also wanted to like extend item clause to 3 items. I've tried that a couple times. The issue is it's like very much ingrained within like the programming on Showdown is very much ingrained as 2 items. So like trying to get item clause to extend to 3 items instead of just 2 is a little bit more difficult, but it's also easier to just to do like it's easier to do no item clause than it is to like extend item clause to 3 items. That's
Yeah, the
what I'm
fact
trying to
that
get
it's
at there.
ingrained into Showdown makes it very hard, doesn't it? That's one of the main issues where I really wanted to start a league without item clause myself, but that was one of the main issues, like Showdown not implementing more than 2 in. You'd have
You'd
to play
probably
in custom game. Yeah,
You just have to use a rule. You can like
yeah,
have a rule that says no item clause
yeah.
yeah.
on the challenge code.
That or you just build in like regular draft and put your stuff to level 5.
Oh god, don't do
That's
that.
always so awkward though.
Yeah, if someone's gonna forget and they're gonna have level 100 LC mons.
I'm like 99% sure that's happened one time. I watched it happen. It was the funniest stuff ever.
Yeah, no, just figure out the challenge codes and then do that.
It'd be like baby random battle, wouldn't it be? If you had a level 100 everything.
Man, this is a bit of a
I hate that
tangent,
mode.
but I saw one time somebody challenged someone to a custom game secretly, and they brought a no guard Tauros with Torndrill.
Let's go.
Oh no.
Comedic trick.
But yeah, I guess my last point about item clause is it's not really. It's just kind of like a throwaway point, but it does make knockoff a more powerful move than it already is. Like
Yeah, because
knockoff
it's
will
knockoff
all
becomes
yeah,
item counting as well.
yeah, exactly, absolutely. And one, I hate item counting. I think that's just an unnecessary way of thinking in the game. Um, you shouldn't have to think like that, but and when you do think like that, I think it puts the person who's who has the advantage in the game in an even better advantage, and it's harder for somebody else to come back from a deficit. But yeah, again, knockoff is already more powerful because one, you knock off somebody's Eviolite, bang, that's another. That's one of their counterplay gone. They only have one more Eviolite left. Yeah, it just makes it hard. Then my whole point here is it just makes it hard to come back and outplay in the game. Well, the battle is basically won in team building, and I think there should be I think there should be more balance
I do feel like
between
that's
building and
Little
playing.
Cup in general. Is just the battle is
Of
the
course,
team build
yeah,
is like definitely more important in Little Cup than it is in Standard for how wild the rules are in Little Cup in general. I don't think Ion Clause is going to getting rid of Ion Clause is going to make that any different. I still think a lot of battles will be won in team building. A lot more, like a higher percentage, I guess, than Standard.
I suppose so. I agree. LC is more about the lines, isn't it? It's about being like knowing the sequence of turns.
Yeah,
I feel like
it's like a
yeah,
lot of sequencing within Little Cup. Yeah.
like what your lead is, what you need to do to win with this end game, and yeah, I feel like the most successful battles that I've had are all lines that I've done over and over and over again in mocks,
Mm-hmm.
and what leads this, and this thing needs to be knocked off at this turn, and what happens when that doesn't, and this, and I feel like that's how it usually goes.
Yep.
For the most part, yeah. It's a very formulated structure.
Yeah, and I guess my point is like I feel like it's a good thing, I suppose, because it's such an offensive metagame. It'll always be like that. But if there was just a little bit of extra counterplay that you could do, if there was a little bit of extra pivoting that you could do to flip the game on its head, it might make it more accessible to more people. Skill might actually like come out, and skill can be a little bit more evident rather than just playing a game in sequences.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
You know, there is actually one more point that, like partially on what you were talking about that people like sometimes can't translate to it. But I think the biggest thing for me about item clause, I actually liked it for quite a bit. I was a pretty big fan of it just because of the way you kind of like draft and play around it. But I've kind of cooled on it lately because I think the big problem is that berry juice is removed from Gen 9. So we kind of have
Yes,
to, in order for the item clause to work, we have to keep allowing that. And that kind of makes the tier a lot more like hacky than it should be.
Yeah, it's a
I
And I think
very
that's a
hacky
big
tier
awkward point.
already, with like being
it's a
Natdex
bit.
mons, but like some
I
leagues don't
will
allow Natdex moves, some leagues do allow Natdex moves. It's very
yeah,
hacky
I will
already.
say my one big like so I've made this discussion a few times. Two of my biggest arguments for that is one, I kind of count berry juice as like I count it as a signature item to Shuckle because that's basically what it is. Um, so in the same vein, I kind of treat it like it would be like Cubone's Thick Club or Clamp Pearl's Deep Sea Scale or Tooth. I forget which is which, but I think Tooth's the offensive one. But I think that because we're in a Natdex format, it would basically be Shuckles here, so its item would also be here.
That does make sense. But I do feel like it's one of the bigger things keeping people away right now. Like people constantly balk at berry juice being in the tier. I think it's like a big reason a lot of people just don't get into it is that they see berry juice and they just it's something that doesn't exist. Like a lot of leagues actually don't allow the cut moves. It's so strange, but it's like one item that stands out. And like it's a facing issue too. How long do we keep berry juice around? What if it's not around in Gen 10 too?
Well, I mean, like I said, berry juice Berry Juice is just tied to Shuckle. So if Shuckle's in Gen 10, Berry Juice is in Gen 10. So that's why I say it's very much like a signature item because I believe, and the other thing too is that Berry Juice does have, I'm 99% sure it does have an image and a description in the code of Scarlet and Violet. So it's not like a traditional like cut move like aromatherapy. It doesn't have a move description. It doesn't have anything in Gen 9, but Berry Juice has both an image and a description. It's just it's like Thick Club. Like it's not in Gen 9 just because Cubone's not in Gen 9.
Right.
I think it's like I think it's just a typical thing of because I mean like you wouldn't consider King's Shield a cut. Actually, maybe it's something else like that, but we're gonna say it doesn't. You wouldn't cut like King's Shield from. You wouldn't consider it a cut move from Scarlet and Violet just because Aegislash isn't in the game. It's just a signature move, so it's not cut. It's just
That,
their respective Pokemon isn't around.
that's true. That's very true.
So at least in my perspective, it's we're playing Nat decks, so we can assume that Shuckle's around, and like in the same vein as Cubone and Clamperl is around, which means their respective item is around.
Yeah, that is
Yeah,
fair.
because I was with you as well, Kalt. Because yeah, it's just I'm especially my stance on this whole item clause thing. I'm of the opinion that like the LC draft meta should be similar to the LC meta, just for consistency's sake and for new people getting into to LC draft and yeah, just being consistent with the rest of the tiers. But yeah, I feel like
I would prefer not
without
to be
berry juice, yeah, without
similar
berry
to like
juice,
Little
the,
Cup on like
yeah,
the. I don't like. I personally don't like the Little Cup. Was it the what they've been banning and what they've been allowing? I
that's fair.
just find it backwards. So I personally don't
Yeah.
like being like similar to Smoke on Little Cup in that way.
I also like drafts just
That's fair.
naturally much faster pace.
Of course.
Yeah.
If Smoke on Little Cup gets rid of Terra, then we can talk.
Oh man, that feels like a lot of
But I
common
mean,
That's not gonna
opinion.
happen,
the other
unfortunately.
thing
Yeah.
with the other thing with berry juice too is my other argument is it makes the game more fun. Like taking it
Does.
out just removes a big aspect of the game. No one likes using Oranberry. No, no one does.
Yeah.
Removing berry juice just makes Little Cup worse. So at least in my opinion, even if it turns people away, it makes the game better. So we should keep it.
No, berry juice is absolutely healthy, and it needs to stay. It
Because
has
if
to.
we get, I mean, I'd rather we keep berry juice and keep the people already in the community entertained than try and get rid of berry juice in an attempt to try and draw in more people who might not even like Little Cup anyway.
True.
That's
Like
fair.
you'd
That's
just
fair.
be
Yeah, I mean berry
damaging.
juice is like the big thing on the item because if you get rid of berry juice, then you need to do something about item clause.
Yeah, that's kind of where the argument starts from, though.
Yeah, because
Item
like
clause
berry juice is like
does.
the second most important item within Little Cup
Yeah,
for
it's
item
so
clause.
like without it around, like item clause gets a lot more oppressive because Oran Berry, like you said, just isn't the same. There was a draft at the start of the tour where it actually was banned, and like
I
I
ran
was
that one.
taking things like Grookey Trico just because for the sole purpose that they could run seeds too.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
you like are desperate for item diversity because you don't always want Oran on like everything.
It was interesting. It really like getting rid of berry juice really it made some mons really shine. Like Shelter, there was no way
Yeah.
to beat Shelter without berry juice.
You also cutting out berry juice, you kill a lot of strategies like the sturdy juice mons and the recycled juice mons, and also the big part of the tier where you can kind of use it as like your free switch in button. You can switch a Pokemon in, they take a hit, and berry juice back up to full, so kind of like a free switch in. Getting rid of berry juice just kills a lot of niches that Pokemon have and just eliminates big parts of the game for not really much in return. Like getting rid of berry juice, I don't think it has really many positive effects to
What
it.
do you
I
mean?
think it
It makes shelter
really just
amazing. That's a positive
this is
effect if I
true.
ever seen one.
This is true. Um.
I think if
Oh
we
shit.
allowed Terra, we can Terra out of the shoulder hit. You know.
So true.
Also, real quick, because I have to throw this mention in here. When I was saying about you could use the berry to switch in, I use it on Stunky a lot. This is our obligatory Stunky mention of the video. I had to, we almost forgot it.
Yeah. All right. All right. So before we get too far off track here, I think that's our discussion on item clauses. Is there any last things y'all want to say? Any last points?
You're all
Um,
smelly nerds.
Unban ban item clause, please. No more item clause. Thanks.
No more item clause. All right.
I'm truly neutral on it. Actually, I still think it's a fun thing to play with. It's just I feel like it might get awkward in the future depending on what they do with items.
Yeah,
I am.
it really depends on the items. Like it's honestly it is an outdated. It has been an outdated clause by this point for since it was like set up way back in like beginning of Gen 7. So
I'm
It's
pretty far.
outdated, but it's fun. But
yeah, it's like it still works. It still works. It's just it's a little bit outdated. It's like
yeah,
you have to get
It's
very
very
creative with
outdated.
the rules with item clause now because of the fact that like berry juice is technically not in the game, even if it is like a like as Peachy said a signature item. It's still you're still getting creative with the rules there.
yeah,
It just rules are becoming more and more creative, and that's why I kind of like shifted more into like just straight up nat decks of like it might as well at this point just allow like nat decks moves as well and just ban stuff like hidden powers and pursuit and something like that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I think that's the better way to go in general. I I just think the more stuff you add to the game, typically it's more fun in Little Cup. Honestly.
yeah, and the cut moves have just made it so much more awkward. But yeah,
It
that's
does.
the story for the
I had
video.
such a bad. Yeah, that's
yeah.
another story. But yeah,
We
it's okay.
need to wrap this up so Tiro can go to call his girlfriend.
All right, we don't have to expose myself like that. All right.
For a
Thank
little
you all
sweetheart.
so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below of what your all's thoughts on item clauses. Are you support it? Are you against it? What did you think of Grankie's points? What did you think about Kalt's points? What do you think about Peachy's or my points? And yeah, thank you all so much once again for watching. Thank you to
Bye.
Kalt and Grankie
See
for
you.
joining this week.
Yep. Thank you everyone for joining the Cult podcast.
Yeah.
Hey!
There it
I
is.
said I was
There's
gonna
the
take it
mention.
over.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank y'all so much for watching this someone's podcast. We'll catch y'all next week. Peace.
Yep. Thanks for having me. See you, everyone.
All right, catch ya.